Ultiworld's weekly radio show about the current state of Ultimate. I'm the host and the editor, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Ultiworld's senior editor, Keith Rayner. It is Tuesday, April 11th. The NBA playoffs start today, but to be honest, Keith, they are overshadowed by what's going on in the Ultimate Frisbee world right now.
Wild times, Charlie. The Discord has been on fire.
Drama. Big drama. Basically, everything we talked about last week about bids, you could throw it out the window. The official USA Ultimate final rankings have come out, and the teams that we thought were going to earn the bids at the bubble have lost them.
That's right. 20 bids to the Metro East in both D1 men's and women's. It's really a shock turn of events, but justly deserved, I think.
I think Dartmouth tweeted bids AC 20.
Metro East 1.
Maybe Metro East 1
Southwest
and
minus
Southwest minus 1.
It's a strong tweet just before the show.
There's been a lot. I got to give credit. The New England teams have been really enjoying themselves. Some of the AC teams as well. William and Mary had a nice couple of tweets yesterday. We'll get to that. But let's just get to the facts first. If you're just trying to figure out what the heck is going on, let me explain. So every year, USA Ultimate gets all of the rosters in, and then they verify all of the rosters with the registrar, and then they determine if there are certain players who are not eligible to play. If that happens, any tournaments at which those players were rostered are discarded from the rankings. And this happens every year. Dozens of teams, hundreds of tournaments, probably thousands of games, maybe thousands is a little strong, hundreds, if not more than 1,000 games are discarded every year. Now, we haven't had rankings since 2019. So it's been a while, and maybe people don't remember this, but this is always something that happens. But new this year, the tournaments that were thrown out and the teams that had games tossed some of them ended up benefiting and taking a bid away from the Southwest men's region, Cal getting leapfrogged by UNC Charlotte, who had their first two tournaments discarded from the rankings for playing with an ineligible player. And then in the women's division, the Northwest lost a bid to the South Central, who will now get 3, UT Dallas jumping over Western Washington to take the final bid. So, wow. Keith, there's a lot to break down here, but fundamentally, what has happened is that both UNC Charlotte in the Atlantic Coast and UT Dallas in the South Central have earned a bid and benefited from the fact that they had games that were thrown out, which theoretically is supposed to be a punishment. Ultimately, UNC Charlotte coming in exactly 10 games, counting in the algorithm, 9-1, 6 of their 7 losses were discarded. So what do you make of just like that basic situation? And there's a lot more to this, and we'll get into all of it, but like, we haven't seen this before. Even though we've seen these results shift around a little bit, we've never seen it change at the margin like this, especially to benefit the teams that are actually having games taken off of their ledger.
This is, I think, the fire starter for me. I think when I've seen people talk about this, I've seen some comments to the effect of, well, this happens every year. It's just not usually that cause that the move. It doesn't usually cause the moving team to move across that bid line. It just happens to be at the threshold where it really matters this year. And I don't actually think that quite captures what has sparked so much motivation and so much displeasure with this outcome. I think it's the fact that teams are benefiting from having games thrown out in a significant way. I think that's definitely a part of it. I think there are a bunch of other elements at play, little things like which regions are losing or getting bids, who the schools are that are getting the bids. You know, if this were, I don't know, Wisconsin in the men's division or in both divisions, if this were Wisconsin, would the fervor be quite as strong? I'm not entirely sure that it would, but I do think that the main issue that people have is it feels like teams are benefiting from a violation of the rules that they committed, and they are hurting other teams by doing that. And that feels at its core unfair. And that is why people have gravitated to this so strongly, not just, hey, there's something weird going on here, but this feels unfair and in violation of the spirit that we all play by. That to me is the animating force here.
Well, and you know, it goes against the logic of the situation. It's an illogical outcome. Team makes almost certainly an honest mistake. Like, people are not actively trying to have, pull the wool. I mean, that has happened. Tulane had a player, and now the team was actually not privy to it, but back in 2015, Tulane was disqualified after qualifying for nationals, and it was because they had a player, the player who was not eligible, forged documentation sent into USA Ultimate in order to appear as though he was eligible. Now, that's not what's going on in 99% of these cases. This is people not knowing that their clock started a year before they thought it did, people thinking that their graduate school classes count, but they're not, because you have to be specifically degree seeking. There's all these rules that USA Ultimate has in place. And usually it's just like, somebody drops out for academic reasons and you have to take them off the roster. Like, these things happen again every single time that we've had these rankings. So the thing is, this part of it doesn't make sense. And I feel especially bad for Cal, who goes all the way across the country to go to Easterns, goes 5-2, wins the 9th place bracket, beats all the key Atlantic Coast teams that they need to beat, thinks they've earned a bid thanks to frisbeerankings.com, and then has it snatched away from them by an AC team that's clearly not as good as them. And that's got to feel terrible.
Okay, I know I'm going to come off like a callous asshole here, I guess. Like I'm, the person says, well, actually, and that's what I'm going to say. I do think people are a little out ahead over their skis here. Cal did not earn a bid. They saw on frisbeerankings.com that they were expecting to get a bid. I guess, but like frisbeerankings.com is not the bid algorithm. Like, everybody who's been a part of this process before knows that this part of the process happens. So saying we were in the right position on frisbeerankings.com, therefore we earned a bid, and now it has been taken from us. I do think that we should be specific in our language. No bid was taken away. It was never in Cal's hands. I get that they had a great run at the end of the season. I still think that they deserve the bid, most likely, based on all the information that I have. But I think it's important to be clear, because I've seen people like Cal, even Cal themselves said, we earned a bid. Well, no, you didn't. You thought that you did. That is not the same thing. So I do think that's an important piece of clarification. I also will note that earlier you said that like thousands of games are thrown out every year. I think that's overstating the scope here. Usually it's 100 games or something like that.
Well, no. It's more than that. I mean, because there's whole tournaments getting thrown out for over 100 teams.
This year,
and how many?
That is not necessarily the case. I mean, I'm looking at 2019 right now, and it's like the final lists are about, there's like 200 games maybe. The preliminary lists were close to the same, which we'll get to.
Tournaments.
That's games. So I will say previously, right? Didn't it? It used to be. Okay, it lists them as games, but it is confusing whether they're talking about tournaments or games. You don't know how many games per tournament are being excluded or not excluded or whatever.
You'd have to estimate that it's 6 games a tournament.
Yeah, it's like kind of a weird system. Okay, maybe thousands
right. was an overstatement, but hundreds is for sure true.
Hundreds is definitely true. Yeah,
and I'll say this: Cal was close enough to the margin that it's possible that NC State or something could have passed them based on second order effects from changes that had nothing to do with UNC Charlotte moving up. But at the end of the day, I think you're like kind of poking at a technicality a little bit. Like, if you run all of the games, then Cal would have gotten a bid. Frisbee Rankings has always been extremely accurate, and it literally runs the USAU algorithm to the number. So I think I certainly understand why Cal is upset.
Yeah, that I do get. I do get that part.
So they post over on Reddit, they post an open letter to the board of directors, which is a little funny because the board of directors has nothing to do with this. The board of directors is not like gonna swoop in and have a meeting and save
like
you. Cal.
you might as well have open letter to the president of the United States, like open letter to the Surgeon General, like
Joe Biden. You need to do something. But you know, they did get a response from the USAU board president, Dave Klink.
Bam, it worked. We're
in the comments, and so. You know, we still haven't really seen any official communication from USA Ultimate. I don't know if there's going to be anything forthcoming. Here's the thing, Keith. Here's one of the reasons that people are upset. And I think it's justified.
Among many, I think.
There was no review period for these games. There are multiple teams who have nothing to do with the national bid picture who are like, why are we not in the rankings? Our roster was listed as valid. We believe that we have completely correct rostering. We went to our 10 games, but we're not in the rankings. We don't know why. There was no process by which people could say, oh, like, wait a minute, why are these games being thrown out? And that has been something they've always done in the past. That didn't happen this year. And so there's been a real lack of communication on top of the fact that you now have significant changes to not only the national bid picture, but with these teams getting left out of the rankings, that's also going to affect the bid allocation from conferences to regionals, which we don't talk about that much on this show, but that matters to a lot of teams.
Oh, yeah.
That can be the difference between your season continuing or not continuing.
A lot more teams that are impacted by this. I mean, I've seen teams talking about where are we in the rankings. I see parents and fans and players asking about when conference bids are coming out. All that stuff is being heavily impacted by the teams that are included and excluded, and the games that are included and excluded.
And there's just no communication coming from USA Ultimate. And I mean, how many times do we have to say that the organization fails to communicate well with people about, and it's not like they couldn't have anticipated this.
Maybe they didn't look.
Literally, they run the rankings, you look and you see what the bid allocation is going to be, and they know about frisbeerankings.com.
Maybe they don't.
And you look at them and you go, oh, wow, there's a discrepancy. We should probably write up something about this, or explain why this is happening, or tell people what's going on. But instead there's nothing about that. And so then obviously these college players who haven't had rankings for 4 years, many of whom literally don't even know the stories of Tulane or of Rhino and Street Gang or of Cincinnati and BYU. By the way, we're going to talk about past bid controversies in our subscriber bonus segment out the back. So make sure you join us for that.
You don't even need frisbeerankings.com. If they ran the rankings after the end of the regular season, which presumably they did.
Correct.
And then ran them again and the bid picture changed, that's
Correct.
Clearly enough to say, we might want to explain this.
So yeah, I just feel like when you're going to have this is an important thing to players, obviously. The bid picture, it's a big conversation. All the teams are thinking about it. All the teams are talking about it. When things go against them, people take it hard because it can mean they don't go to nationals. And to then just sort of not go by the way that you've done this in the past and have a period for which people can say, okay, here's the things, we feel like these games should count. Oh, this person, sometimes a registrar screws up. And you have to go back to the registrar and say, hey, why did you say this person isn't seeking a degree? They clearly are. And then they fix it, and then USAU fixes it. But that process has been left out here, and now I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, USAU is telling me that it's basically done deal. Now, the thing is, we've heard that in the past, and then they've made changes right before conferences or regionals. We've literally seen that. So I don't know, but I just... If you're one of the teams that had your region lose a bid at the expense of a team that had games tossed, how can it can't sit right. And obviously, Keith, this has got to get fixed in the future in some way. They need to think about, and it may not be easy, but you need to think about what can you do to prevent a situation like this from happening again.
And that has been a big part of the conversation going on in our Discord. It's about what is the fix here? I don't think it's as simple as like, well, let's just give Cal and Western Washington their bids. Like it doesn't work that way. This is a fairly complex mathematical environment, right? I don't know the technical term here, but you have all these different teams with their ratings and scale, and then you're comparing them against one each other. So whenever you tweak one thing, it has a ripple effect. And there was a comment in our Discord to the effect of like, I feel like the most popular solution that's been presented right now is don't allow teams to benefit from having games tossed out. So if games that are tossed out increase your ranking, like they increase your overall rating score, they should not be included. That score should remain in. But like, how does that impact the overall picture? What are the second and third effects of that? When suddenly you have teams that have some games counted because they're good for them and others that don't, get them removed. Like,
yeah, because that's going to artificially deflate teams,
yes.
Which, obviously that penalizes that particular team, but it also penalizes teams that play that team.
Yes. So like, is that what you want? What if that ends up being the thing that decides a bid? I don't think anybody really wants that. So I don't know that that's necessarily the solution, even though everybody seems to feel like, or many people seem to feel like that is the easiest solution, is just do that. I've seen all the way at the other end of the spectrum. Let's nuke the entire algorithm. Let's have a selection committee, whatever.
Oh, come on.
I don't know if we need to go that far. I do think that perhaps the thing that just recently was commented in our Discord that I thought was a really tremendous observation was that we still are dealing with the same strength of schedule bias that was pointed out on our site by Scott Dunham years ago. And that is clearly having an effect here. I mean, if you look at the resumes of UT Dallas and UNC Charlotte in the women's and men's D1 divisions respectively, without the games that are being thrown out, do those feel like bid earning resumes? Absolutely not. And so imagine a world in which those teams didn't go to the tournaments that got thrown out. UT Dallas doesn't go to Antifreeze. UNC Charlotte doesn't go to Queen City Tune-Up or whatever.
You're right.
They would have won a bid with these results.
Correct.
And we would be upset about something totally different right now.
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
That to me is a core issue with the algorithm and not the processes around how we validate or invalidate results, which to me are secondary, because this same outcome could have come through an organic process that required no like weird human interference like what we're dealing with now, and that feels like a problem to me.
Yeah, I think and literally this problem has already been pointed out. Basically the idea is if you're a pretty good team but not a top 10 level team, you're incentivized to play weaker teams and crush them and never go to a tournament where you're going to play better teams than you and like take losses. And that typically will float you in the rankings. And that's basically what happened. I mean, UNC Charlotte has a bunch of big wins over like bad and mediocre teams. And then they have one loss to South Carolina. And, somehow the way the math worked out, they end up being inside the top 16. This problem is well known. It's been established for years. There's clearly good data on it. And USA Ultimate basically hasn't done anything about it.
Okay, I think it just hasn't popped up that frequently at the national level. And so it's mainly been something that it's been like, well, this, the problem isn't occurring that frequently in a highly visible way. No one's really complaining about it that much. So what should we do about it? And the trade-off obviously for teams is that in theory, you don't get much better going and beating up on bad teams. So you're in a bid and then you either can't keep it at regionals or you get to nationals and you're totally out of your depth or whatever. You're not developing as a program. That's all probably true, but like winning a bid has value and the system shouldn't care. The system when you design it shouldn't care about like all those other trade-offs or whatever.
Here's the best idea I've heard. If a team has games invalidated because of roster issues, the minimum number of games that is required for them to be eligible to earn a bid goes up from 10 to 15.
That seems reasonable to me.
That way, you're basically saying you screwed up. You're going to now have a limited data set, and we're going to require you to then get more data into the algorithm, which is a way of, hopefully it doesn't directly solve any of the stuff we're talking about, but it would make it less likely to be a problem.
What about at the conference to regional level?
Maybe you have the same threshold of 10 to 15, 10, just keep it at 10.
I also harbor some small concern about the fact that like this process is so messy. I mean, there may just not be a way to do it better. Like there's so many cases of an ineligible player being rostered, and that could just be because we have to work through basically a third party with the school registrars, and that's really difficult. They're not all the same. There's hundreds of schools that are or are not super communicative with USA Ultimate. Like that is a massive undertaking. So I perhaps understand why that isn't cleaned up, but like I wonder if there's some sort of better system where players are better equipped to go through the process of rostering players effectively, their teammates effectively.
Well, I think another thing that you could do is move up the deadline for getting a verified roster in,
with the hopes that we can catch stuff earlier.
Like instead of having it be in, I don't know, when was it this year? I don't actually remember.
But is it the conference's deadline? Because that was
it's like in late.
That was late.
I want to say it's in February-ish. No, it's before that. But because what's happening is that some teams are finding out that they have a player that's ineligible, and then they're forced to go and like play additional tournaments in March without that person in order to get to their 10-game minimum. But like you could reduce the overall impact of all of this if you had the registrar deadline be earlier. And, that comes with its own trade-offs. Like some colleges don't get started back until the middle of January. You can't have it too early. Teams need to be able to like actually put together their team. But having some kind of system and also, helping players be familiarized with what the actual rules are on eligibility, those kinds of things would help as well. But there's always going to be weird stuff, Keith. That's the other thing that I keep coming back to. There's always going to be weird stuff. There's always going to be weird edge cases.
Yeah.
And it happens. I don't know. Deal with it. Like, I get it. It feels like the Southwest, and the Northwest have got to be like, yes, we like got all these bids that we deserve because we're super good and deep. And then they lose them to regions that don't feel like they earned them. But at the end of the day, you often say this, Keith. If you can't finish top 3 at your region, do you deserve to be at nationals?
Yeah, I mean, for all the Cal heroics at the end of the year, they also lost Northwestern 12-10. They got blown out by UCLA 10-3. They didn't have to be at the margin, they didn't have to be the last team out or whatever. Not to say that like, I'm just saying that there was more at play. That this is not the only reason they don't have a bid. They lost to Victoria at Stanford 12-7. Like that is their most damaging loss of the season. That didn't have to happen. There were opportunities beyond just like what they did at the end of the season, and you're certainly in a position to secure your situation so that you don't have to worry about these things going the last. There's always going to be somebody at the margin. There's always going to be a first team out, and that team is always probably going to have some grievances. That's happened since forever. Every year that we get to the bids, there's somebody complaining about something. this is a particularly powerful example, and I get why it feels unfair, especially when you see the final resumes of the teams that are getting the bids. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Cal has no legs to stand on or should just be like, oh, well, that's totally fine. We should have won more games or whatever. But I just hate to see people. It's like when you blame the ref at the end of the game because they blew a call, but you didn't have to be in a one possession basketball game. Could have done some other stuff earlier.
So let's ask the really important question here. What are the chances for UT Dallas and UNC Charlotte to get to nationals, to keep the bid that they fraudulently earned? And I think we can all agree they're fraudulent bids, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it shook out this way.
I think I can get up.
You're not going to look the gift horse in the mouth here, but they are not legitimately earned bids based on these resumes, based on what happened here.
I mean, these teams, I think, are not favorites to keep their bids in either situation. I think UT Dallas has a better shot, but they're also more of a black box team. We know less about them. We've seen them against fewer good teams, but I think they're in a much shallower region than UNC Charlotte. Maybe you see that as a ticket, chaos is a ladder kind of situation. But I think it also means that UNC Charlotte has to beat a number of quality teams to protect this bid. Many teams that are roughly as good as them. And maybe even some that are better. They're going to have to go through NC. How many times have we listed the AC depth? They're going to have to go through NC State. They're going to have to go through Duke. They're going to have to go through William and Mary. They're going to have to go through JMU, Georgetown, Virginia,
South Carolina.
Who
a lot of these teams have wins over them.
Yeah. So, it's a tough path. I cannot say that they're the favorites to keep the bid over the field when there's like 5 other teams I think are roughly as good as them, even though I think they're a good enough team to win the bid, to be at nationals and compete with other teams.
Sure.
I think they're probably that good. I think they're maybe, if they were playing South Carolina on a neutral field, I'd probably favor South Carolina by like one or two goals, maybe 2 or 3 goals.
Well, here's the stats on the South Carolina UNC Charlotte matchup this season. South Carolina's 3-0. They beat them by 3, by 1, and by 4.
Yeah, there you go. Charlie, I'm shocked that we're almost 30 minutes into this podcast and you haven't said what you usually say in these situations. Why can't they just play for it and we live stream it?
Yes.
Cal, UNC Charlotte, UT Dallas, Western Washington. Let's get the throwdown going.
Get them matched up. We'll host them here. We'll find a stadium in New York City. They can fly in. Winner keeps the bid for their region.
And I
bet you Western Washington and Cal are in for that.
I think the aggrieved teams just auto win the flip. You played the ineligible players.
Yeah, you get a freebie. You get a freebie. Yeah. You can pick. You want offense or defense or which wind. Now that would be incredible. I think UT Dallas is going to come out of the women's division. I think Charlotte's going to lose in the men's division. There's just too many teams. And there's too many teams that have beaten them and have ownage over them already this year. But why not UT Dallas? I mean, who's beaten them, Keith? I mean, sure, you look at Colorado and Colorado State in front of them, but after them, I mean, the next team up in the rankings is Wash U and then Texas. I mean, I guess I could see one of those teams, but like UT Dallas has been decent. It's not like either of these teams is a bad team. They're solid teams. They're good. They're going to be in the hunt. I think UT Dallas is going to claim that bid.
I'm even if like you have them at like I don't know, like 40%, like that's about as generous I think as I could get with them.
I think they're higher than that. I mean, the next 3 teams down are Wash U, who Dallas beat 12-6. Then Texas, who I don't believe they played.
Although Texas did lose to Wash U, if that gives you some scaling.
And then Arkansas, who Dallas beat 10-3. And UT Dallas is 18-1. Their only loss came to Middlebury 12-9. And that's not a bad loss. I mean, I know that's a D3 team, but that's a really good team. That's a team that could probably go to D1 Nationals. I think Dallas is legit. I think they'll go to Nationals and maybe win their consolation game. You know, like they're not going to go out there and make a run at go to pre-quarters or something, but they're solid.
I just think that I got to pick the field when there's two teams I think are probably as good as Dallas. We have so little data on Dallas. There's just I get that they have the win over WashU, but I don't have enough here to feel real confidence in picking them.
And you know, Texas is certainly the team with the history and the legacy and the knowledge of winning in those spots. So interesting stuff. And so let's talk about what this means for Cal and for Western Washington. You know, Cal in the Southwest, still 3-bid region. 3 bids is nice, but there's a lot of good teams in that region, even some that didn't earn a bid. Do you see Cal having a chance to get past a slow Santa Cruz or UCLA?
Yeah, I think that Cal has proven that they can play at that level. It has been an up and down season for them. You know, obviously it was really windy at Easterns, which was their best tournament. That was an easy shot to call for a lot of people. They have struggled against slow this year. Haven't been close in those results. But they haven't seen as much of UCLA and Santa Cruz. They got blown out. They got blown out by UCLA. I mentioned that earlier, Pres Day. It's such a big margin that it feels kind of aberrational. You know, 10-3 is weird. And that was probably their, I don't know if I'd say it's their worst tournament. I guess SBI is probably their worst tournament. But they also beat UCLA 12-10. So they have a weird set of results. Being able to compete with UCLA is pretty impressive. They haven't seen Santa Cruz really, I don't think. And they haven't been able to take down slow. Slow's looks like they're peaking at the right time. So I think that they're dogs to do it, but they're certainly the most dangerous team outside of those top 3.
Man, that is going to be a tough region to pick because do people have faith in the Santa Cruz team?
We did early in the year. After 2 tournaments, everybody was all aboard. Sure.
I mean, they split their games with UCLA. They're 1-2 against slow. And I mean, they've been good. You know, they don't really have a lot of bad losses besides the totally inexplicable loss to Emory back at Pres Day. And then that UCLA loss. I just they feel like the kind of team that's going to get figured out and that is going to lose to Cal and UCLA and not go to nationals, you know?
I don't know. Being
if I was Santa Cruz, I'd be a little nervous. Slow
is a nice feather in the cap. I mean, that arguably could be the best win of anybody in the region. Slow has comparable wins. I think, you know, maybe you think Slow beating Pittsburgh is better, but you know, it's a very impressive win and shows the ceiling of the team. And the thing that I will say, and I said this back when we started not when we started specifically, but when the hype train was going for this team, is they don't look unsustainable. It doesn't look fluky.
They don't.
I worry a little bit about the lack of experience, about being in this situation. You know, this isn't a team with just loads of elite level club players who've played in major club regionals games or gone to club nationals. So I worry about that part a little bit. That lack of experience can be painful when you're in the clutch games. You know, can they handle if they make the final and lose and have to go to the back door or whatever? Can they handle that situation?
It's the mental side stuff.
Yeah,
100%.
I think that the talent level makes them still, you know, one of the top 3 teams.
Well, we don't have to pick them today. Thank goodness. We get to think about it a little more. We get to see what happens at conferences. And so how about Western Washington and the Northwest?
This is bad for them. This is definitely
I feel like it's terrible for them. I feel like they're toast.
It's already been a tough region, right? It was already going to be a tough test. But yeah, you take away a bid, they got to go through Victoria and somebody else. That's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. That said, we haven't really seen them. We only see them at one tournament, I think, with Acacia Han. I don't even know if they had her for both days. So that's a huge difference maker. Like, I think you can see how this team's ceiling goes up a lot with her there. She's probably their best player, even as a rookie. But like, is it hard to integrate that person when you've been playing so many of your tournaments, and who knows how many practices without her? I don't know. But they certainly will benefit a lot from her talent, but it's such a tough region.
They beat Victoria at Northwest Challenge. Mm-hmm. That's the thing that you'd look at.
Yeah.
That's going to be the game.
Really
that's going to be the game to
go.
That's going to be the game to go right there. I'm calling it now. UBC is going to win easy. Washington second. And then you're going to have Oregon third. I wouldn't be shocked if Oregon's in the game to go, to be honest. But then it's going to be Victoria versus Western in a barn burner. Goes the universe, I bet you.
Drama. And that'll be a late one too. You know, it's West Coast, so we get that result late. So
anyway, wow. What a crazy sequence. Who knows? There might be more to this story, but there's just kind of, it feels like it is what it is at this point. Everybody just has to accept it, and they've got to go out there and play the games in front of them. And, the Atlantic Coast men's teams have got to be praising the algorithmic gods right now after getting bailed out of what was going to be the most boring regional in the country.
and the fans. I mean, the fans are benefiting from this. I saw somebody say that, like, from a spectator standpoint, this is an incredibly great outcome. Not only did you get a ton of drama this week, but the quality of these tournaments went up. Although the South Central women's regionals definitely took a hit. You could have gotten some spice out of Colorado State, UT Dallas, and that is no longer on the table.
Now it's going to be a snooze fest. I mean, you're sitting out here telling me UT Dallas is going to have trouble with the teams below them.
Yeah, I mean, you could.
I got to talk you into it before our picks contest, because you can't be coming out here picking Arkansas or something.
No, I in the same way, I can't. I don't have faith in those other teams either. So, yeah, this is a spicy scenario we have set up here for the AC, which at least will be entertaining. And, I think that whichever team emerges is probably going to be pretty good. Not that I see people arguing that's not the case or whatever. But I still, like, looking at this whole thing, I think that there are flaws in the algorithm system. I don't think that means we need to throw it out. I don't think it's a bad system. There's certainly been some talk about that even prior to this in the Discord. The problem is not that the algorithmic system that we have right now is imperfect. I think that's clear. The problem is there a better alternative that's less imperfect? And I don't know what that system would look like, because there does not feel like there is a clear, like, better option. Maybe probabilistic is better, but I think that has flaws too, and would still be impacted by problems like this. We would still be relying on this same mathematical core. So you would still run into these types of issues. It would just be probably more obscured, which maybe is fine. Maybe that's enough to keep people off USAU's back. But the communication issue, like, you got to see that this was going to upset some people. And to me, this really is a sign that USAU is strapped for resources. I mean, it just feels like they scaled back this whole process. Taking feedback from the teams, providing the spreadsheet with the excluded games, which didn't happen until the last minute after all the fervor. Maybe they had it planned anyway, but it doesn't look like that right now. All that stuff, the rankings dropping on Friday, and then the announcement of the rankings coming on Monday, like, the rankings coming out and being marked final and not preliminary. Like, all this kind of stuff is communication stuff that feels like it was on the cutting room floor. We don't have room for it in the budget. We don't have room for it in the runtime. We've got to move on. So that stuff feels like a problem to me. I thought it was insightful that somebody, was like, well, how much would you be willing to pay more in membership fees to help make sure the USAU has enough staff to handle all these things. Like, they're doing all this at the same time they're organizing all the conference championships that are happening for the next 2 weeks.
I'm not going to lie to you.
I know. I
think it's a weak reasoning. We don't know. I've been actually trying to get membership data from USAU for a little while. We don't know what the current status is, but the college division is perfectly healthy right now. I mean, plenty of money is coming in. They have plenty of people on their staff. There's lots of full-time staff. Now, I know they're down from where they were, and I will 100%, this needs to be said. The college director left USA Ultimate at the beginning of this year, and they are working with an interim college director who's basically helping out as almost like a volunteer.
And is running the system for the first time in 4 years or whatever.
Yeah. Matthew Borland, he's a great guy. He's a hard worker and he's super smart. And I think that there's a combination of lack of staffing, not having done this for 4 years, and just a general culture of lack of communication from the organization, right? That's a cultural problem, not just a right now problem that is causing a little bit of this. But I will also say this. The organization has enough money to be a strong governing body that the community is excited about and doesn't have these constant problems. But some way, either in the structure of the organization or the leadership of the organization, something has got to change, because these kinds of things happen again and again and again and again and again, and there seems to be no solution. And so I wonder, I often ask myself, I'm like, okay, so you're saying they got to deal with all this conferences stuff. Yeah, that sounds like a nightmare. Why aren't they working closely with all of the local governing bodies around the country, your Minnesotas, your PADAs, your DIS New York, your DIS Northwest, etc., to run these? Now, I know they're doing that somewhat, but the thing is, they have antagonistic relationships with multiple of the biggest organizations that have the most organizing power locally, who are the actual people who have to run these tournaments. Why is USAU having to take all this on? They shouldn't do that. I would like to see them decentralize more. Have a smaller team, pay the people more so that they can attract great talent and retain great talent, and then ask your partners, who are the local organizations, how do we help you succeed, and how can you help us, run the national scene? This is how it should work. This doesn't seem even like complicated to me. And yet instead there's petty fights and there's little battles happening and there's, these communication failures. And I just find it so frustrating when it seems like there's an obvious solution in front of us. And I know that they're coming out of the pandemic and that the budgets were crushed and that they had to furlough people, and it was probably super demoralizing for everybody. And I'm fully aware that they do many important things for the sport. We need USA Ultimate. We need a strong, centralized governing body. But we also need them to embrace the rest of the people who are doing organization and not assume that they are always the ones who are doing things in the right way. Listen to what people are telling you. I just find it so frustrating, Keith.
And I am sympathetic to what you're saying. Yes, this is as much a resource management issue as it is a resource acquisition. That's the word I'm looking for. A resource acquisition issue, right? Like, it's not just about how much money you bring in. It's like, how do you distribute that money once you have it? And I know that's sometimes one of the qualms people have with USA Ultimate. So, making sure that you have the people in place to help execute these systems is obviously important, but I'm less positive and probably less knowledgeable exactly about what that looks like for USA Ultimate, but I'm less positive that they have all the tools on hand to manage this system effectively. So, all these conferences, like you said, sounds like a nightmare. They're in like a critical part of their year, but they also knew this was coming. It's not like these conferences are a shock It's not like you didn't know you were going to have to run the rankings at the end of the year. Like, the lack of communication always makes it feel like USAU is not being thoughtful about this stuff. That's what it comes off as.
When obviously they
right.
are.
Anybody who knows the people at USA
care.
Ultimate knows that. But when you're, the ninth player on some conference team and you're not on there, you're not thinking about the USAU employee you probably don't know at all anyway. You're just thinking like, how is this organization that I pay all this money to can't put my team in the rankings and then can't tell us why when it happens to us? You know what I mean? Like, we have regionals that don't have locations yet. It's how long are we? At what point do you think we're going to get conference schedules and bids? Like this is
apparently tonight.
Okay, that would be good. We're recording on Tuesday, so Tuesday night would feel pretty good. I'll be impressed if that is mostly across the board. So yeah, this is. I think people are going to be frustrated with the outcome here and the lack of communication. I don't know if there's. I feel like it's unlikely, given the history of USA Ultimate, that they're going to change anything from here. And it's more likely, but still unlikely, that they're going to say anything about it.
They're going to tell you to send an email and give your feedback, and then it's going to disappear into the netherworld. I don't know. There's got to be a better process here by which USAU and the community talk to one another. So anyway, crazy stuff. Let us know your thoughts on any of this, whether it's the bids, the algorithm, the USAU communications. Deep Look at ultiworld.com, at DeepLookPod on Twitter. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're talking Surge, Gridlock, and more.
Well, let's start with this one came across my timeline, and I was like stunned by this. But this is a little WNBA news. So Abby Myers, drafted 11th overall by the Dallas Wings, the WNBA, has some Ultimate background.
No kidding.
She, I guess, played some Ultimate in high school. And there's a picture of her in the cup, and it's quite imposing. She's got a lot of height, a lot of length, and went to Whitman. I think got drafted out of Maryland in college. So congratulations to Abby Myers. I don't know if she's a listener of the show, but obviously has some Ultimate experience, and great to see that's going to be present in the WNBA. I don't know if that's anything that we can claim previously, but we'll take any thin connections to other excellence out there.
That is awesome. I can't imagine what a monster she would be as an Ultimate player if she was still playing today. Like, number one in the sport. Pretty easily.
We got to find out.
Probably pretty easily.
Well, one of the other big stories from the weekend, Charlie, and all this kerfuffle in Ultimate as maybe covered up what was pretty big news in the Premier Ultimate League. We talked about the Surge and losing to North Carolina. Like, oh no, should we panic about Philadelphia Surge and their maiden season? I think the time to panic has passed. They just got a win, and a confident 4-goal win, I believe, over the New York Gridlock in a major East win for them to open their season. Home opener, Gridlock a little bit shorthanded, missing some of their big new additions, who I believe are playing at TEP. So a huge win that is a great way for the Surge to start the season, and has to raise concerns about New York's ability to compete for a title, not just in a like, okay, how good is this team actually going to be sort of way, but in a, oh, well, now you're starting from in a hole sort of way.
Yeah, like literally, you get 6 games, you're 0-1. What's the path? DC just destroyed Indy. You lose to Philly. Like, you're going to have to shape up quick. And I know they were missing Gina Cartagena and Mosquera and others, but I don't know. Like, I look at the roster that they had for game day, Keith, and I didn't think, like, this team can't win. And, 17-13, it's not like it was a disaster, but it definitely makes me concerned.
The game, I'd say, didn't really feel that close. Like, Philadelphia was consistently ahead. They maybe had a 2-goal lead at halftime, so it wasn't like they were blowing them out, but then pulled away in the third and the fourth. Lindsey McKenna was huge for Philadelphia. It was a very upwind, downwind game, and McKenna could help power Philadelphia's offense upwind, and nobody on New York really could manage that. I don't think they scored in the upwind end zone until like they were down 4 or 5 goals. Like it was pretty much a wrap at that point. So Philly gets a huge opening win, and certainly a big loss for New York. And the PUL has gotten off to a pretty shocking start, I'd say. I could have seen Philadelphia winning that game, but walking away with it in that fashion is a bit of a surprise.
I'm telling you, Keith, this Philly team is no joke. They're going to be in the hunt for a championship year one. I really believe it.
It will be a shocking turn of events, but this is exactly the path that you walk. Like, this is how you start it, is you go out and you get a big win over a division rival. Elsewhere in small ball, Charlie, we're going in a different direction here. We got some memes.
Okay.
Memes that have arisen from this rankings situation, and we alluded to them earlier in the podcast, but we've got some good ones. In addition to William & Mary's like 20 bids to the AC and 1 to the Metro East. Shout out to the Metro East, baby. Got to hold on strong there. What are some of the favorite tweets that you've seen around this situation?
Well, I love the one from William & Mary, the men's team Twitter. They say, at USA Ultimate, we have to come clean. We pride ourselves on honesty, integrity, and spirit, and feel we must tell the whole truth regardless of how it makes us look. In every game we lost this year, we had an ineligible player take the field. We had no idea this player was ineligible. He said he totally still had eligibility and definitely was not a random person we found to pick up. We understand this will result in all our losses being thrown out, and we accept that price. The fact that this came from an AC team makes it that much better.
Yeah, I mean, I saw somebody tweet like something to the effect of, can you imagine if you reverse this and the Southwest was getting the bid, the AC was losing the bid, like imagine the AC outrage after how bad they were that the UNC men's team only got 6 and not 7 players on the U24 team. I thought that was a pretty good both point and joke.
Well, I've seen a little bit of AC apology tour going on here. Like, oh, this kind of thing happens every year and da-da-da. I mean, the games get thrown out every year, but bids switching hands after a team comes in and whoops up on the AC teams, I don't know about that. What you got some other memes you like, Keith?
Oh, well, good old Tire Biz Frizz, just not long before this episode is being recorded, dropped a Tucker Carlson meme with him, basically a script for him to read as the story of this. And it's so easy for me to imagine his voice as he reads through this. There's a bid to the Atlantic Coast that Cal Berkeley's trying to steal. What is going on? Who wants this? Like that, I could see it all perfectly.
It's not me.
I thought that was pretty strong.
Maybe it's you. Maybe it's your family.
Time to get the outrage machine going,
and then there was one more. Cal tweeted, I mentioned that they made their Reddit post, but they also had a tweet. They quote tweeted USA Ultimate, and they said, after no reply from USAU, we ask again, why haven't we seen what games have been thrown out? Why don't teams have a chance to appeal games? Why does a team
here comes from Columbia at TEP, where there was quite a bit going on. We had in the women's division, Molly Brown taking on Revo. Molly Brown getting the win in that one with Manuela Cardenas on their side, not Revo's side. I don't know what that means. I don't know the implications there, but I know she's pretty good at Ultimate. She's gonna help you win the tournament. And in the men's side, it was New York Empire who won the tournament. They beat DC Breeze, I believe, in the final. So a bit of a first salvo in the East. I don't know how much to make, how much this is representative of what we to expect from the season, but it can't be a bad thing to go out and get the dub there. And New York Empire and joining with DC and players from Austin in playing as the AUDL All-Stars against the Latino All-Stars and the Latin American All-Stars. But I'm not sure exactly who the players were that they were selecting, like how they got these players, but they put on quite a show. Definitely a fun showcase game.
Yeah, there's a bunch of video up on YouTube if you want to check out these games. Cool tournament. I've heard great things. I've never been myself. I'd like to go sometime, and I think it's cool. You know, the AUDL clearly sees Latin America as a potential growth market for them. They're sending teams down there to play showcases and really trying to get interest from that market. We've seen players come up from Latin America and play in the league. So yeah, good stuff. I mean, hey, and who doesn't want to watch Mali play Revo? Like, let's just put that on repeat.
They've always had exciting matches, although I think we, much like when we talked about UNC Radiance, we need to find some cloning technology. Although I guess they did it for us. I mean, there's 2 Cardenistas, so maybe the cloning's already been complete.
All right, well, that is going to do it for this week's edition of Deep Look. Thank you so much for tuning in. And don't miss our Out the Back, where we go into some of the past bid controversies. In some ways, some of them maybe even more shocking than this year's. So join us there. You can get any level of subscription. We'll get you in. Go ahead, Keith.
Good luck to everyone traveling to play conferences this year. The beginning of the postseason for many teams. This is the defining weekend of their year in their attempts to make regionals. So good luck and safe playing, safe traveling for everyone. And hopefully on the field, there can be only the fun kind of drama and not the kind of off-field drama that we've had to deal with all week.
I was a junior at NYU when NYU first made regionals for the first time. That was a cool experience, even though I wasn't playing because I was abroad. It was cool.
Fifth year at AU when we made regionals.